We are officially live on Facebook, and I am very, very excited about our panel discussion today. My name is Felina Martin. I'm the Executive Director with the Institute for Nonprofit Innovation and Excellence, also affectionately known as INNI. We are very, very excited about our panel discussion, and we are looking forward to your participation and spice up your fun life. And this is about how you can get some great tips from our professional panelists who represent grant writing for decades. I won't even add up all the years of experience that's represented on the screen. But if you want to know any and everything about grant writing, these are the ladies that you want to talk to. They come to us from a variety of different backgrounds, representing experience in education, government, and the world of nonprofits just in general. And so, and faith-based as well too. So I don't want to forget that. So if you happen to be in any one of those sectors, you're in a special treat for this wonderful program that we have. Again, it's our great panel discussion that we have. And I'm so excited that I can't stand it. So let's get started. Let me do some introductions so you'll know who's going to be giving you these amazing tips this afternoon. And I'm not sure how it's going to appear on your screen, but I'm going to start with Jennifer Donald. Jennifer Donald is an INNI member and has been for years. And then I'll let each one of them actually do their own personal introductions. But welcome, Jennifer. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Felina. I'm so honored to be here with these ladies and on this panel. Yes, my name is Jennifer Donald. I'm the president of Metropolitan Design and Consulting Group. And one of the services that we provide is grant writing and grant management. So we are excited. Our company, our staff should be watching now, but we are excited to be here and excited to answer any questions. And we thank you again for this opportunity. Thank you.
You're welcome. Welcome, welcome. All right, and then let's go to Deborah Weatherspoon. So Deborah Weatherspoon has great experience in education, and I think she's just a phenomenal participant of this panel with years of experience coming to us. So Deborah, just tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your experience with grant writing.
Thank you, Felina, for that wonderful introduction. I'm Deborah Lucas Weatherspoon. I'm a retired educator. I have taught in Hernando County and Columbia County schools. I taught special education, early childhood education, VPK, adjunct instructor at Florida Gateway College. And I just love being with children and people. And I hope I can add something to this panel. Thank you.
Definitely can add something to the panel. And last but definitely not least is Katrina Human. So Katrina, oh my gosh, I've known Katrina for decades and her work that she has done in the community overall, but also her wonderful experience that she has done with state and government and contracts with government and grant. I mean, it can go on and on and on. And I mean, what better person to ask questions of than someone who works for federal government or state government, because there's so many policies and procedures that go into government and contracts that you want an eagle eye. So Katrina Human, tell us a little bit more about yourself as well.
Good afternoon. My name is Katrina Human, and I work with the Department of Juvenile Justice, and I have over 13 years of experience in grant writing as well as state procurement. And one of the main grants that I work on are the smaller foundation grants for startup nonprofits. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to work with the young ladies that are on the panel. And I know this is going to be a great experience for anyone that's interested in pursuing grants.
Yes, indeed. It will definitely be indeed. So please forgive me if I'm looking down. I want to make sure that I'm available to be able to answer any questions that you may have through social media. So I do have questions, of course, for the panel, and I'll be guiding them through that. But we want this to be engaging. So if you're watching us on Facebook, we want you to be able to ask the panelists questions as well. So I'll be checking social media and the feed for your questions. And then again, this is actually going to be recorded and available for you to review later. And we are always available for any questions that you may have that you did not get a chance to ask here. You can easily send us questions. So please feel free to send any questions. And that's anyoffice@gmail.com. at anyoffice@gmail.com. in case we do not receive or get to your questions today, I want to make sure that you do that. And again, you're following us on Facebook, then you know that you can ask your questions on here. If you're watching us, give us a shout out and say hello. We want to be able to see who's joining us. I love how Jennifer put her team on the spot.
Yeah.
I know you're watching. I absolutely love that. That was great. So let's get started with our questions. That is the most critical piece, is getting started with some questions. All right, so let's see. I'm going to change some things on here because I know you're probably going to get background noise. This is hilarious. I always talk to my mom about her phone, and now here it is, I'm playing with mine. All right, so Tamara, thank you and welcome for joining us, Tamara. We appreciate it. So wonderful for you to join us. All right, so let's get started with our question here. So what advice would you provide someone who has never submitted a grant? Now that one's a pretty big one, actually. We just did a workshop, an open house just yesterday, and I was so surprised with those who participated who had never, ever submitted a grant. So let's start with you, Katrina, answering that question. What advice would you provide to someone who's never submitted a grant?
I would recommend trying to find a very simple grant, like an application grant, to try to fill out on your own to kind of practice and see what's being asked of the grant requirements. I think just getting a touch on the smaller grants, they don't require a lot. It's usually just an application, maybe a couple of questions. And there's also not a lot of additional information, like a lot of additional documents are not required. So I would say that start there first. And then also take a grant writing course, even just to get the basics. And if you're not able to do a course, there's plenty of information that you'll find if you Google, if you go to YouTube, that's my best friend. You'll find a lot of information that will give you guidance. And from there, I think that will build your confidence in understanding just the fundamentals of grant writing.
Oh, I think that's great, great advice. And when you say application grant, so let's even take a deeper dive with that. Can you define what an application grant looks like?
I will give an example. Walmart has a grant that is online, and there's different questions that they may ask you, and it's very simple. They may ask you the demographic. They have their particular programs that they're looking to sponsor and service. So you'll pick a category. According to that category, they may say, this is the age group that we want to serve. You just answer whether or not you can do that. But it's very straightforward. It's online. It's one submission. And then you hear back on whether or not you get accepted. So you're not really required to write out a full-fledged vision or full-fledged mission statement or anything like that. It's just pretty much a one-time grant that will allow you to fund that particular category for your community. So it could be pertaining to food insecurity. It could be pertaining to homelessness. There's several, like maybe 10 categories that you can complete. So there's a lot of corporations that have these type of grants where it's just a one-time grant, an application online, and you submit, and then you just wait patiently for that award letter.
Right. You know, and I think that Walmart one is a phenomenal suggestion that anyone can go ahead and apply for those, because it is so simple to do. You know, this morning I was working on a grant, and I think all of you would appreciate it. I'm really excited. It's through the Florida Humanities. So dropping a grant potential for all of you who are there. And I would love for you, you're watching us now, and we're really excited. Go ahead and give a shout out in the comment section and say your name and what organization you're representing. This is a great time to promote the cause that you believe in. So Jesse, welcome. Thanks for joining us. But go ahead and put that in the chat. You know, I've spent 3 hours, ladies. This is the part I was saying you'll appreciate. 3 hours on the Florida Humanities grant this morning, and I'm still not done.
Yeah.
Still not done on that grant. It is a wonderful fill in the blank, but there's lots of uploads and budgets and things like that. So Katrina, thank you for that suggestion. But starting off with something as simple as Walmart, that could take you maybe 30 minutes, if that. Jennifer,
Exactly.
What about you? So what advice would you provide to someone who has never, ever written a grant?
I would say be patient, be realistic, and be encouraged. those are the 3 B's. I say be realistic because you probably are wearing a lot of hats. You're probably a nonprofit that may be just getting started. I know we deal with a lot of startups. So be realistic about the resources that you have in place and your board members and what skill set they bring to the table. Some of them they may have some grant writing experience, or, you just want to kind of capitalize on who has what skills. Someone may be a good reviewer or a good writer, but just utilize those skills that you have in place, those resources that you have in place. And be realistic, like Katrina said, start small. If you don't have the resources to do a federal contract, or start small with an application contract. And just be encouraged. Like you said, Felina, you spent several hours and you're still not done. It's doable. It's doable. Just always remember that, stay in your lane and utilize the resources that you have. But those 3 B's, being patient, just kind of pace yourself, know what the deadline is. Don't wait till the last minute, and just be realistic and just be encouraged and optimistic. Yeah, it is doable. It is doable.
Yeah. I love the being patient part, Jennifer. I think you really nailed it on the head with that one. You definitely have to have a lot of patience when you're doing those grants, by far. Well, Mrs. Witherspoon, what advice would you add to that? Someone is just brand new to grants, they've never submitted one before. What tip would you offer?
Thank you. Thank you, Felina.
Sure.
First, I would say surround yourself with knowledgeable people. Look through a variety of grants before you decide on what you want to do, your focus. Look at the underserved population. Look at the community. Talk to people that you plan to target. Find out their needs, not wants, their needs. And like everybody said, you have to be patient. Make sure you go through your steps in writing your proposal, and look at the end process also. How do you plan on getting there? What steps you plan on taking? What activities you plan on focusing on? And just be patient. Once you have finished writing your grant, before you submit it, let others read it to make sure they understand what you're trying to say. So when it is submitted, they won't have to send back the grant to question certain things. So you want to have knowledgeable people. You want to take your time in writing, and you want to make sure you target the underserved, because that's why most grants are put out there, to benefit the underserved population of the community. Thank you.
You are welcome. Thank you. Well, I want to share with everyone a little statistic, and thank you, Jesse, Brittany, shout out to you for joining us on live. And then Tamara, thank you for putting your information on here as the regional director. And this is fantastic. It's FBCH and One More Child. So thank you for putting a little shout out on here for your nonprofit and your organization. This will be on this feed, and we'll be sharing it with others. So thank you again for watching. Again, if you're paying attention and you're watching us, we really want you to just take advantage of the opportunity to promote your organization on this feed. So in the comment section, go ahead and write and introduce yourself. Where are you watching us from? And then the name of your organization. I'd love for you to put that on here. But one of those statistics that I want to share with you is one I thought was just very fascinating, and it's from a report that NE actually had done not too long ago. And it was a nice pie chart where we had a number of leaders in the community share where are they deriving their revenue from. And this one may surprise you. So 26% of them were getting their money from government contracts, government grants, 26% of their funding, excuse me, let me clarify that, 26% of their funding was coming from government contracts and grants, right? Big piece of the pie. And then 9% was coming from foundations. And again, that also includes grants. So when you look at your revenue streams and that nice pie of where it should come from, you're looking at over like 35% of it coming from grants. And that's actually right in line with the national numbers that are saying, okay, well, the majority of nonprofits, they're getting grant funding. And so that's fantastic to have grants as part of your revenue stream. So we know about special events and sponsorships and all these other ways of generating money. But you kind of look at them, you could be missing money on the table if you're not getting your grants, applying for grants. So ladies, back to our panel, let's look at the next question is, what do you see as the positive and the negative side of grants as a revenue source for nonprofits? And let's start with, let's start with Jennifer. So the negative and the positive.
Okay. Well, I'll start with the positive. It's always good when you can get free money. So going back to grant funding, I would highly recommend it, but definitely have all your ducks in a row. Make sure you have everything that the grantor is requesting. Once you do, it's an excellent source of funding for your organization that you don't have to pay back. Like Katrina said, you be patient, wait for the check. Some grantors will just, send you the funding. And that's it, and you have that funding available and you can begin to use it immediately. Others, they will give you the funding, but you may have to submit a quarterly report or a monthly report or check it. So be mindful that even though you receive the check or you receive the funding, there may be some requirements that the grantor may look for afterwards. So make sure that you're able to to satisfy that as well. But grants are always positive. You can receive them again on the federal level, on the state level, the foundation level, local level. The negative is don't put all of your eggs in the grants basket because, the grants can be competitive. There are others going after those grants just as well as your organization. So be creative, think outside the box. We know about the golf tournaments and the silent auctions, but, be creative based on what your organization is. You may want to do talent shows, or you may just be creative as far as other revenue streams. So the negative side I've seen is that a lot of organizations, like I said, they just put all of their eggs in the grants basket, not realizing that grantors like to see that they're not the only source that you're looking at. You've got some skin in the game, and you show that skin in the game by showing the other creative ways that you're looking at to bring resources or revenue or funding in. So that's what I would say would be the positive and the negative.
Thank you, Jennifer. That is awesome. All completely valid points. Not putting all of your eggs in one basket is definitely a critical one. And as I mentioned too, having diverse revenue streams, it's almost like investments. So if you've ever heard the term about investments, you do not want to invest in one specific thing. You want to have a diverse investment streams of where you are generating your revenue. So, Mrs. Witherspoon, what is your take on that? The negatives and the positive sides of grant writing, or grants, grants.
Well, the positive is it's always great to receive money to help others. And a lot of things Jennifer said, I was going to say, but but on the negative side, you have to have people on your team that are probably volunteers or that can change courses if necessary, because things do come up, just like this pandemic we're in, just like all the bad weather, happening different places. You have to be ready to change courses just in case something comes up. You have to have a plan B, but it has to be in the scope of that grant also. So you have to stay positive, you have to stay focused, and you have to have people on your team that's willing to go that extra mile for you and with you.
Fantastic, thank you. And Katrina, what would you add to that, or if anything, about the negatives or the positive sides of grants?
I would say the positive, the grants is a great way to fund your project or your program. One of the things I like about it, once you're awarded, more people know about your organization, because many times there are postings of the awardee. And so that may, give someone an opportunity to go research about your organization, and you may end up getting some potential donors to participate, and donate to your organization, to your cause. But one thing I would say about the negative side is the fact that the well does run dry. So if there's not any funding available that particular fiscal year, you're out of luck. So as everyone has mentioned, Jennifer and Mrs. Weatherspoon has mentioned, definitely diversify, and you mentioned as well, diversify your funding options, definitely.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. One of the things that I'll throw in, and welcome Donna Smithy to the conversation. We're glad to have you join us on Facebook Live. Yay, Donna. But one of the things I would definitely add as far as a negative is that it can be time consuming. So you can very well invest, as I mentioned earlier, I've invested about 3 hours into this one particular grant. Now we'll back up because this is also another tip. So one of the reasons why it is taking me so long for this particular grant submission is that there are a couple of pieces that they've requested that I didn't already have my fingers on. So that means I had to create it. So I had the actual program developed in place, the narrative for the program, but I had not taken the extra step to already create the budget for the program before I started the grant application. So then I had to stop, save the information, then I have to go back, and now I have to sit down and go over the entire content of what that budget is going to look like to implement this particular program. So of course that's adding into the time that I'm having to spend on submitting this grant. So for me, one of the negatives is the time. However, if you are investing time, 3 hours, 2 hours, whatever, and that grant could potentially bring you $5,000, $10,000, $50,000, then you do the math. Because if you land that grant, then now you've just earned $10,000 an hour for the time that you've invested in it. So it has to be a great balance, looking at what's the reward on the other side of the time that you invest into it. So again, if you're joining us on Facebook Live, go ahead and put a comment in the comment section. We'd love to hear from you. You are more than welcome to ask your questions in the comment section for our panelists, and we'll make sure that we address them as well too. So we are talking about spicing up your fund life. This is a great discussion about fund development, but more importantly, we're focusing on grants, because who better to have that conversation with than 3 professional grant writers on the screen. So my next question for you are, what are some common mistakes? Oh, here we go. Some common mistakes that you have seen when you worked with clients or you have to work on or reviewing a grant. What are some common mistakes that maybe you've seen people do with grant submissions? And we'll start with, we'll actually start with Mrs. Weatherspoon, if you don't mind taking this one to start off. Some common mistakes that maybe you've witnessed.
Not taking the time to focus on what you're doing, waiting till the last minute, waiting till a couple of days before the deadline to submit it. Not getting qualified people working with you, and you have to be optimistic. Planning your activities, planning the end results. What do you anticipate? What do you want the underserved group to achieve? And you just have to stay focused on what you really want to do. And it questions you as a person. Is this what you really want to do? Can you really help someone? Are you helping them? Are you self-serving? Stay focused on the group that you're working with, and talk to people that have written grants in the past and who have achieved success, and get them to, come on your team. And the main thing, you have to stay focused, and you can't get upset if things don't go your way. Sometimes you may write a grant for a certain purpose, and I have had this to happen. And there's so many great groups that have written grants, they change the amount of the grant that you get. So you have to be ready to have those people in your corner, volunteers also, in-kind donations. So you just have to be ready for anything. You just never know the outcome, because I have seen grants when they display them, they have between 10,000 and 25,000. And you put in the amount that you desire, but they will give you what they have on hand and what's available. So you just have to be prepared and have plan B and plan C.
That's great advice. Thank you, Mrs. Weatherspoon. So definitely being flexible and being able to pivot pretty quickly. And don't wait till the last minute to submit those grants. Those deadlines are definitely sent to you in advance for a reason. Well, Katrina, what would you add to that? Some of the common mistakes that you've seen?
One of the biggest I've seen is respondents not reviewing the grant guidelines and reading them and then rereading them and then rereading them, because many times documents are submitted or the proposal submitted, information is missing, or the documents that have been asked to be submitted, exhibits such as, tend to not be incomplete. So I would definitely say read the guidelines, understand the guidelines. Usually there's a point of contact from the funder. If you have questions, please reach out to them. Ask as many questions as possible, because your funder wants you to give you this opportunity to receive these grants. However, it's very important that you follow the guidelines. So I would definitely say, please read the guidelines. And if you have any questions, please reach out to your funder's contact.
Good, great advice. Thank you. So no last minute submissions, read those guidelines. And Jennifer, what would you add on some common mistakes that you've seen?
Well, the ladies have pretty much covered. I would just probably say things like grammatical mistakes. There are some applications now that have the spell check in them now, and you don't have to worry about that. But if your application online or something like that doesn't have that functionality, copy what you're pasting, put it in Word where there is somewhere where you can spell check, and then paste it back in. But little things like grammatical errors, and again, not following instructions, not providing enough facts or statistical data, weak documentation, unsupported arguments or what have you. Make sure you do your research, use statistical data to support what you're saying. I like graphs. I'm a visual. I like graphs. If you can put those in, charts, pictures, all of that to kind of break the monotony of just wording, if that's allowable. Just paying attention to deadlines, like the ladies have said, staying on course, not too much jargon, being as concise as possible, and just being sure to sign off on everything, making sure you have the correct signatures and all of that, and review over and over again until
review, edit,
submit.
Exactly.
Review before you hit submit.
Yeah, it's definitely spell check. Well, this leads to another question, Jennifer, and the rest of the team. Kind of throw another thing in here, is that, so what if you happen to have a program that you've never ever you didn't even have the day one, it's never existed before, so you may not have some of the historical data to support that program because it's brand new. What other type of statistics or what other advice would you suggest, maybe, of being able to show the benefit or the impact that program might potentially have if you haven't already done the program? Any suggestions on that? Like, where could you, if you're trying to prove, with some data, any suggestions on how you might be able to get that information or do something?
I would suggest doing some research and checking out other organizations, maybe outside of our community, and reaching out to them to see what resources, if they're willing to share, that they may been able to, find to get those statistics. Also, if there's an opportunity for you to create your own volunteer opportunity somewhere, depending on your particular area of interest, there might be something that you can create to build some statistics for your community. But I would definitely say reach out to other organizations outside of your local community, maybe within the state, maybe outside of the state, and see if there's resources that they can share with you to help you build up that data that you may need to complete your program design or complete your program, your project.
Yes,
Yes.
great suggestion. Yeah, any
Yeah.
other suggestions, ladies?
Yeah, I was just going to piggyback on what Katrina said as far as surveys. What we like to do is suggest that folks, just create a survey. You can use something as simple as, there are different platforms out there. I think it's Survey Monkey, or, things like that. And just use that to gather information from your community, from your target audience that you're looking at there. But I just wanted to kind of throw that in, something as simple as a survey to gather information, to gather that data. So,
Oh, that's fantastic. And what about you, Mrs. Witherspoon? Did you have anything maybe to add to that? Or?
Well, I was just listening to what the others have said, and you need to reach out in your community, the community that you plan on serving, and see whether there have been programs similar to what you're trying to do. And national organizations also, and reach out to someone who has tried it before and use some of their data, create your own based on what they have found, and just piggyback, like they said, on what they have done.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I want to give a shout out to Katrina Rivers, who's participating with us on Facebook Live. Thank you, Katrina. So excited. Katrina is the president of the Big Bend Black Nurses Association. So shout out to all of our nurses, and Katrina for taking the time to invest in learning more about grant writing for her organization. So thank you so much. It's really interesting when we talk about the data and statistics. I think that is one of those areas that is overlooked. With having that information and statistics. And so thank you for sharing your thoughts about how someone might be able to obtain that information. Can't just see what you think about this, but what do you think about the value of testimonies as well? So it may not necessarily be a number or a data, but sharing testimonies of some of those who you've served, even though it's not a program that you specifically have launched and got over, but you still may have served that particular demographic in some other form or fashion. So ladies, do you think that that's another valuable piece to add to a grant, is testimonials?
oh yes, definitely,
Yes,
definitely.
definitely.
Like I said, pictures, testimonials, the best grants capture the imagination. So you're trying to paint a picture. I like to tell folks, if they can read your grant and grab a Kleenex and go, oh my God, I had no idea. This is, you want to kind of touch at the heartstrings of who's reading it, because, grant writing can be competitive and you want your grant to stand out. You want it to be unique. You're telling a story and you're painting a picture. So testimonials definitely are good. And like I say, if you can add pictures, there are certain items that you can't add and some you can, but if you can, definitely do that with the testimonial pictures and things like that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think just telling the story, as you have said. So, we might use the word testimonial, but it also could be telling, again, the story, right? And I love that, Jennifer. Yes, make them cry.
I didn't know. You got it.
Make them cry through your words. That's fantastic. Well, let's see. Another question that we have slated here too is if an organization is looking to hire a grant writer, what are some of the skills that they need to look for in a person? Now, if you happen to be at that level, we know that everyone is not at that level and in the position of being able to hire a grant writer, but what are some of those skills that that organization would want to look at, or, whether you're a one-person operation or, multi-people operation? What are your suggestions? What are the skills that are needed? And let's start with Katrina on this one.
I would say the skills of a grant writer: a good listener. You want someone to be able to sit down and listen to what your goals are, what your vision is, and find ways of catering it to your proposal. Also someone that's personable, because there's times that you have to work on a possible committee with multiple people. So you want them to be able to engage with each person on the team, resourceful, experienced in the type of grants that you're pursuing. So if you're looking to pursue a state grant or a federal grant, someone with that experience. And also, if you can find out their success rate. I think that's very important whenever you're looking for a grant writer, somebody that's dependable. And as well as, I believe, I have my little notes here. Oh, that's all I have right there. Dependable. Definitely you want
Gotcha.
somebody that's really great with time management, project management. So you can definitely hit those deadlines because those are very important when it comes down to the grant submittals.
Fantastic. Well, you hit on one thing that I think a lot of people do not realize is that success rate. That is like a big key indicator. And so I would love for the ladies to answer the question originally posed, but I also would love for you to talk to, when you say success rate, Katrina, can you define that a little bit more?
Well, when a grant writer, submits, you submit your application or you submit the proposal, and you're waiting patiently to see if you get the award. But there are times when you don't get your award. So you're wanting to see exactly what is the percentage of the grants that you've submitted that were actually awarded the funding. So the range that's typically out there is 50% to 60% from what I've done research on. So you definitely want someone that's kind of in that range. And I mean, to me, I feel if someone is not meeting the minimum, there's still an opportunity, because we never know the circumstances from that funder, what may have changed that may have prevented them to award that grant. The funding may have, as Mrs. Weatherspoon mentioned, the funding may have changed. So the number of applicants that they were able to award may have changed, but you definitely want somebody that can show proof of their success rate. And I think that will be very helpful. So who you're working with and what areas that they can really help you in getting an awarded grant.
Thank you. And Jennifer, let's see, Katrina covered a lot of different skill sets that a grant writer needs to have. Are there any other skill sets that you would add to that?
Like she said, the experience, the credentials, the educational background, any certifications, definitely the success rate. Word of mouth, just other clients, check out what other clients that grant writer has worked with, and just a grant writer that's passionate about what they're doing, and they have the compassion. And like you said, the ability to listen and really understand what your goals are, what your objectives are, and just help you with that. So ditto on everything Katrina said.
Well, we've got one ditto. Let's see, Mrs. Weatherspoon, is there a second ditto?
Well,
do you have anything else to add?
Well, by being last, it's not much left to cover. But after you have received, I'm looking for a person that have been successful in writing the grants, implementing the grant, and making sure the vision that they had for the grant was successful. Working with the people, did you achieve your goal? What did you expect the participants to learn from the grant? The underserved population. Was it job placement? Was it going to college? Did you follow through with them to see whether they're successful? You don't want to get money, work with a population of people, and then that's it. You need to have a follow through. I would want to ask that person, what happened to the participants that received the benefits of the grant? Were they successful? Are they continue to be successful? What are they doing now? Are they helping others?
Right.
In a community, in a city, in a country, in a job, in a business, it's a continuous growth. And if you receive benefits, you want to be able to spread that to others so everyone can be successful. But you just don't want the grants, the benefits, the participant just to stop, become stagnated. You want them to blossom. And I would like to hear success stories, like you say, the testimonies. I would like to get testimonies from others that receive benefits from the grant that you just participated in. So you got to have that follow-up. I would like to know, what are you doing to continue having contact with those people? Because when you write one grant and work with one group of people, you may not see them anymore. But I would like to see a follow-up. What have you done to follow up to make sure that they stay successful?
Sure. And I think those skills, those suggestions definitely apply with grant writers, professional grant writers, as well as being accountable to the foundation or donor that you're working with. Obviously, having those statistics and that follow-up is really important. And holding that grant writer accountable for producing that information before you actually sign the contract to work with them, that there is definitely that level of expertise that you would need, because you are expending funds and money for their services with the hopes, and that's the critical part, with the hopes that you land that grant, not a guarantee, but with the hope that you would land it. And so it's an interesting statistic that I had picked up earlier, and it was about how many grants are actually awarded. And so you're kind of thinking probably in your mind, like, wow, should I really invest the time in a grant? So nationally, the statistics, the stat average is about 35 to 50% of the grants that have been applied are actually awarded. So I know it's a little range there, but that's the best when I looked at multiple sources for this information. It was anywhere between 35 to 50% of grants that have been applied for are awarded. So it's something to keep in mind. But another statistic that may shock some of you ladies here was one that I thought was very interesting. And it was done, it's a little old statistic when we're trying to get some new data, but it was something done in 2014 where NE had found out how much money are our nonprofits locally, how much are they getting from federal funds that go into our community. So this is money that we are bringing in to the Big Bend area. Okay, this is not money that we've been looking at local businesses to provide or local foundations, but this is money that's coming from the federal government and coming back into our community. The amount was $33 billion.
Wow.
Yeah, it's incredible. Oh, sorry, million, sorry. $33 million. I'm adding a B on here. Maybe that'll be another 10 years. But $33 million that was brought into our area from federal grants. Can you imagine what that does to our economy? And that's something that we, as far as a sector, have really been advocating and showcasing to our local government officials and our business community, that the nonprofit sector, we are a business. We're a very strong industry that brings dollars into this community that allows us to be able to employ 1 in 10 jobs in our community. So again, 1 in 10 people who work in our area are employed in the nonprofit sector. So really important statistic. Again, if you're joining us on Facebook Live, thank you so much for investing this time into learning more about grants. And again, we've got some wonderful ladies on the screen who will be more than happy to answer your questions. If you throw them in the comment section, we'll be glad to answer those for you. This is also going to be available for replay. So just in case you missed some of the other highlights that we talked about earlier, you missed some really good stuff. But you can always go back and replay it. So I'm going to follow, and we'll close out with this, which is, again, part of the conversation, spice up your fund development. And that's your 3 tips. So you've had some time to really think about this, right? Your 3 tips. What are your top 3 tips to writing grants? Your top 3 tips to writing grants. And let's start with Katrina on this one, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Because I see Mrs. Weatherspoon is in like deep thoughts. I'm gonna give her a moment, But go ahead and let's start off with Katrina.
Okay, well, I would definitely say familiarize yourself with program development or project development. It's very important when you're writing your proposal to really know your niche. You definitely want to know your demographics. You want to know the funding costs. You want to know how much it's going to cost to execute your particular project or program. So you definitely want to be able to articulate your goals that you're trying to accomplish. I also would say research your idea. Get statistics, as we mentioned before. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, because in most cases, what you're looking to accomplish, there may be an existing program. So I would definitely look at their program model, reach out, and because there may be an opportunity for partnership. There may be something in another state that they're looking to bring to Florida. So there may be a great opportunity for you to develop partnerships. And then I also would say, develop a very strong and diverse board of directors. I believe your board of directors are going to be your heart and soul. And if you can get a great team together, and that they are from all walks of career paths, definitely someone that's an attorney, someone that's budgeting. That will help out so much, because when you get these different projects, to be able to run it by a strong team, it will give you peace of mind in knowing that you have covered the bases before you submit your grant. So those would be really my 3 tips when you're looking to submit a grant.
Oh, phenomenal tips. Thank you for that, Katrina. Well, let's switch over to Jennifer. Your top 3 tips.
I would say number 1, because I had a lot of tips, but choose my top 3. Top 3. Document your project's need compelling. Make sure that needs statement. We talked about this a little bit, but make sure you have a strong need statement. And what I mean by that is just simply that it's addressing the need in the community. It's making a difference. Like Mrs. Weatherspoon said about the underserved community. Make sure it's a need that's addressing that particular community or that particular target that you're looking at. So start with a strong need statement, because from that need statement flows your goals, your objectives, your activities, everything flows from that. So just make sure you've got a strong and compelling and unique need statement. It's different. You're not duplicating efforts. The other would just be the budget. Make sure that budget also is flowing, the numbers are matching, everything. You've got a good budget narrative, and that also is flowing from the need statement. And then my last one would be, if you don't get the grant, ask for readers' comments. We call them the RCs. Ask for why did we not get the grant? Find out. Contact that program administrator or just whoever is in charge, and just find out if you can get a copy, request a copy of the reader's comments, so that you can see what you did wrong and you can assess it and do better the next time if you decide to reapply. But that's one thing that I wanted to make sure I say something about: the evaluation, the feedback on the reader's comments. So those are the 3, yeah.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. That's awesome. Well, we might just tap you on the shoulder for your full list a little bit later, since it sounds like it's a nice long one. Love to share that. And then Mrs. Weatherspoon, what are your top 3? We've saved the best for last here on this one. Your top 3 that you would see tips, your top 3 tips.
Well, I'm going to be quick. The first thing I think of, you have to be compassionate about the grants that you get. Make sure you have a knowledge of what you really want to do, because number 2, don't just go after the money. You see the dollar signs. You have to have a background. You have to be compassionate about what you really want to do. And number 2, don't go with just the dollar signs, the money. Number 3, have a thorough plan. Get people in your corner that know and can understand what you're talking about, and will stick with you to the end, because you will have people come to you that want to participate, and for some reason they cannot relate to what you're doing and saying. And you have to have people that have a different voice than what you have. You have to listen. And you have to be compassionate, because not everybody grew up in the same household, have the same ideas. So listen to everyone, listen to all ideas before you formulate your plan.
Oh, that's great tips, great tips. Well, first I'm going to throw in a couple of my own that I've learned over the years of working in nonprofits. And, the biggest one that I've noticed as a common mistake, but it's a tip that I definitely want you to work, is that if you are not a strong writer, then find someone who is. Okay, so tip for me, number 1 by far, is to find a really good writer that can convey that story and the message of your organization. Because from the reader side, from the foundation and the donor side, their only association with your organization is what they read on that grant submission. They are not going to take the time to go to your website and research your website or your YouTube page or your social media, or they're not going to talk to your board members or any of that. they only are going to read what you submit. And so you have to be able to easily convey the story of your nonprofit through that grant. And so number one tip is if you're not a strong writer, then find someone who is a strong writer. That's a big tip that I have for you. And one tip that I actually learned from Jennifer in attending one of her workshops and classes is, by far, in case you didn't hear it earlier, this is worth repeating, is start off with writing your grant information in a Word document before you actually go and put it into the application. And it has been the best tip, Jennifer, so thank you again for that one, is starting off with putting all of that information in a Word document, which allows you to go back and edit, read it, reread it, send it to somebody who may be a better writer than you are and have them read it. And then that way you can go ahead and make all your edits before you do your final submission, or before you spend hours and countless time on that application. And not all applications are created equal. So tip number two, that, they're not all created equal, and some of them will not allow you to start the application and save it. Some of them, if you have started that application, you're going to have to finish it right there in that session. And oh my goodness, God forbid, you already invested like 2 hours into it and you still have more work to do, but you get distracted. And the next thing, it's timed out. Oh, I don't know how many of you hate that. That session that you just spent writing all that stuff is timed out and none of your information was saved. So that is like the absolute best tip that I've ever learned, and it came from Jennifer on that one. Before we finalize and wrap up, ladies, I wanted to throw something out here to you because it gave me a thought. Is tell me about your perception. What is the value of having a grant writer who has experience within that certain, let's say, industry or sector or service? So for example, I had mentioned and introduced all of you as being great professionals in certain fields, like, again, Mrs. Weatherspoon in education, decades of experience in education. Katrina, decades of government, as well as Jennifer has that experience. How valuable is that to hiring a grant writer who has that experience within that specific industry? Just, and anyone can jump in with that, because I know that was off the script on that question.
I would say, from my perspective, I have experience behind the scenes. I see what is expected, what's the, as for us as an organization, the agency, what we're looking for. So having that experience, you can help with developing the scope of services, the deliverables, just getting that insight from what works, what may not work. But I definitely say having that background and writing that scope helps out, especially if you're new to this particular area of interest, because many people have a passion for a particular area, like it could be working with youth, it could be working with elderly, but yet they've never worked in that type of community before. So I think having that behind the scenes experience is very beneficial, and at least you will know the keywords to use. You'll know exactly what type of documentation may be needed, how the budget needs to look, for that budget narrative. Sometimes that can be a little overwhelming when you're trying to draft that. You know the money, you know the amount you want for that particular area, but to actually put it into words can be kind of complicated. So having someone with that experience would be very helpful and may minimize some of the anxiety.
Great point. All very great points. Trina, when you mentioned keywords, I was like, ding, 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 because that's another tip, is keywords to include within your grant, and that writing part is really important. And one of the things I remember, I don't know if this is still a hot keywords group of words. So ladies, you can help with me on that. But I remember when you had to use like improve quality of life. That was like the key phrase that seemed to be in every single grant, that you were improving the quality of life through whatever, but keywords is definitely a critical part. Well, Jennifer, let me go back to that question. I'll ask that as well too. So just the value of being able to have someone who's a grant writer who has that experience in that particular subsector industry. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it makes a big difference. It takes the stress off of the group that's, working on the grant. My background is youth and music. So those are my two areas. I actually have a nonprofit. In addition to my for-profit, we have a nonprofit where we work with teenagers that are interested in starting their own business. So we have, it's a Teenpreneur Foundation. I've done a lot of volunteer work with Junior Achievement for the past, I don't know, 15 years. I've been teaching at Rickards High School and Godby High School and FAMU High School. So I've had a chance to hear the buzzwords and to speak and work with the teachers and the educators and instructors. And it gives me an upper hand when I'm writing in those particular areas or in the arts or in education. So it does make a difference, understanding the lingo, and it helps reduce the jargon and the slang, and it just helps overall. So to what Katrina said, but yeah, it's very helpful when you have a
Wow.
grant writer that's
Within
experienced.
that.
Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah, I
definitely.
think definitely within that industry. And Mrs. Weatherspoon, I mean, do you have anything to add to that as well with your experience in education and how that might affect your ability to write grants for someone?
Well, in my notes, that's what I had, the key words. They are so important because it lets the donor know that you are a true professional, you are a great grant writer, you know what you're doing. They have confidence that you will be getting the money because they know that you will be doing what the grant is asking for. And there may come a time, they may have another grant, they may see your name or organization come up again, and they know right away that, hey, this is a good candidate. They fulfilled the grants before. They're helping the people. They're doing what we ask. So you have a heads up with them. So it's very important that you have those keywords. And it's very important that you take your time in doing your grant and read and reread and reread it and get someone in the business that can help you fulfill that and read it and make sure they understand what you're saying, because sometimes you can write something, you get 3 people to read it, you get 3 different answers. So it's very important that you have those people on your team, but those key words are so important.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. Ladies, this has been a fantastic opportunity to learn so much, not only about you, but also, of course, about grants in general, these critical tips that we hope everyone has taken notes on before they venture off into the world of grant writing themselves, or if they're considering looking to hire a grant writer. And so I'm going to end the note with some great, exciting news from Any. Wow, if you're on right now, this is perfect time for you to be on the forefront of what's happening at Any. So Any is launching grant writing services, and the 3 faces that you see on the screen, you will hopefully see them again in the future, as they've been an instrumental part of this entire process for us to be able to extend grant writing out to the nonprofit sector. And so we are very excited about this service. We know that it is really, really needed. Not in our community, but even beyond in our whole region. So stay tuned for more information about that. We will be opening up the services with a very limited number of spots available for participants, but we are really ecstatic about being able to offer the grant writing services, grant workshops, grant readiness workshops, and so much more. All of those things that you need to be successful in grant writing. And a couple of other little things to just notate is that we are having a board recruitment mixer. Katrina mentioned that earlier as well, about having great board members who support your efforts with the grants, but also they're reflected sometimes in that grant information. So sometimes when you're submitting your grant, they want to know the names of those people who are on your board. And it does help if you have some wonderful powerhouses serving on your board. So that's very helpful. But our board recruitment mixer is March the 11th. And if you're interested in serving on a nonprofit board, or you're a nonprofit organization looking for board members, then the board recruitment mixer is the event for you. So we want to see you on March 11th at 5:30. And then last but not least, everybody needs a plan. How do you know where you're going without a plan? And so we ask that you join us on March the 2nd for Creating a Fund Development Plan, which will be taught by Alice Lee Stansberry. You can find out all this information at myne.org. Well, on that note, since I'm losing my voice, thank you, ladies, for everything. This has been phenomenal, and I hope you had a great experience as well.
Yes. Thank
Take care,
you.
everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.